What if the greatest archaeological discovery wasn't an ancient temple, a golden idol, or a long-lost civilization, but definitive proof that empathy is older than writing, religion, or even organized society? What if buried beneath layers of earth and time lay not just tools and bones, but evidence of love, deliberate, selfless, and enduring? For decades, we've pictured our prehistoric ancestors as brutal survivalists, locked in a daily war against nature, predators, and each other. The popular image paints them as cold, instinct-driven beings, guided by one rule: only the strong survive. But emerging research is now challenging that vision in ways both astonishing and profoundly human. Thanks to advancements in ancient DNA technology, scientists have been able to do what was once thought impossible: detect chromosomal conditions like Down syndrome in prehistoric remains. And what they've uncovered has shaken the foundation of our understanding of early humanity. These weren't isolated anomalies or statistical flukes. They were real people, infants and children, who would have required continuous care in environments that offered none of the modern comforts we take for granted. In one haunting case, deep in a cave in eastern Spain, researchers found fragments of a Neanderthal child's skull. Through precise CT scans and genetic inference, they identified symptoms consistent with Down syndrome, chronic vertigo, hearing loss, and severe balance issues. And yet, this child, nicknamed Tina by scientists, lived for at least 6 years. Imagine that. In a world of perpetual migration, harsh climates, and predator threats, a child who couldn't walk steadily or hear approaching danger was protected and carried for years. This wasn't mere survival. This was compassion in its rawest, most unfiltered form. And Tina is not alone. Across Europe, from Neolithic Ireland to Iron Age Spain, archaeologists are uncovering graves of children with disabilities who were buried with unprecedented care and honor. Beaded necklaces, bronze rings, seashells from distant shores. These burials defy Darwinian logic and demand a new framework. One where our ancestors weren't just driven by instinct, but capable of deep emotional bonds. This is not just an academic breakthrough. It's a revelation of who we are and where we come from. If empathy existed in a world without laws, gods, or governments, what does that say about the essence of being human? This script isn't about romanticizing the past. It's about rediscovering it, challenging the very assumptions on which our ideas of progress are built. The bones have spoken, and they tell a story not of barbarity, but of belonging. They whisper that long before civilization, there was care. Long before history, there was heart. And maybe, just maybe, kindness is not something we evolved into, but something we never left behind. Chapter 1. The Neanderthal child who redefined humanity in a cold limestone cave in the Valencia region of eastern Spain. Archaeologists uncovered a fragment of bone so small it could have been overlooked, and yet it would come to reshape our understanding of what it means to be human. The fossil fragment, just a few centimeters long, was part of the inner ear region of a Neanderthal child's skull, an area that, thanks to modern scanning technologies, can reveal surprising details about neurological development. CT scans and anatomical reconstruction showed multiple malformations in the semicircular canals, structures crucial to balance and spatial awareness, combined with an abnormal cochlea, a feature associated with hearing loss. The child, who lived more than 100,000 years ago and was given the nickname Tina by researchers, suffered from chronic vertigo, partial or total deafness, and severe motor instability. In any context, These conditions are debilitating, but in a Paleolithic world, where survival depended on constant movement, sharp awareness, and physical contribution, they would seem like a death sentence. And yet, Tina survived until around age 6. This single fact defies centuries of assumptions. It suggests that early Neanderthals were not solitary, brutal creatures, but something far more complex. Social beings with the capacity for deep, sustained empathy. The implications are staggering. In order for Tina to survive 6 years, she would have needed daily assistance. Someone to feed her, carry her, keep her from danger, help her during seasonal migrations, and soothe her through episodes of dizziness and confusion. Such care would not have been temporary or casual. It would have been constant, committed, and coordinated. Most importantly, it would have had to come from more than just a mother. It would have required a social group that collectively chose to slow down, adapt, and protect a member who could not offer anything in return. This challenges the long-held notion that early hominins operated solely on utility and reciprocity. Tina's very existence suggests that Neanderthals possessed a form of altruism, an emotional intelligence rooted not in strategy, but in instinct. The care she received couldn't have been based on language, laws, or cultural expectations. It had to be something deeper, older, encoded in the social behavior of the group. Her story calls into question the outdated paradigm that views Neanderthals as intellectually inferior to Homo sapiens. Instead, it reframes them as emotional equals, possibly even pioneers of social care. And when placed alongside similar findings from other sites, including Homo sapiens children with Down syndrome, it becomes increasingly clear that this wasn't an anomaly, but part of a broader behavioral pattern. The cave where Tina was found wasn't even a permanent dwelling, but rather a temporary seasonal camp, suggesting that she was carried and cared for on the move, through difficult terrain and uncertain conditions. That decision, the daily choice to keep her close, to not abandon her, may be one of the most important indicators of humanity we've ever uncovered. Because it tells us that compassion did not emerge from philosophy or religion or civilization. It was there in the beginning, woven into the actions of a group of Neanderthals who, tens of thousands of years ago, chose love over logic. Their story, preserved in the tiny bones of a disabled child, speaks louder than any monument. It tells us that the roots of who we are run deeper than we imagined, and that at our core, we are not just survivors, but caretakers, guardians of the vulnerable. And that perhaps the first truly human act was not making a tool or drawing a cave painting, but carrying a child who could not walk. Chapter 2. DNA doesn't lie. Tracing compassion through genetics. In a world increasingly fascinated by ancient relics and buried cities, the greatest revelation of the last decade hasn't come from pottery shards or forgotten monuments, but from the microscopic double helix that spirals through every human cell, DNA. With revolutionary advances in paleogenetics, researchers have begun to unlock secrets previously sealed in bone, offering an entirely new lens through which to understand our ancestors. One of the most groundbreaking findings to emerge from this genomic revolution is the identification of Down syndrome and other chromosomal disorders in prehistoric populations. Where once such conditions could only be hypothesized from skeletal irregularities, scientists can now definitively identify trisomy 21, the genetic hallmark of Down syndrome, by analyzing ancient genomes extracted from human remains. In 2024, a team of researchers from the University of Adelaide and the Max Planck Institute published an expansive study in Nature Communications, having screened nearly 10,000 ancient individuals from Neolithic to Iron Age Europe. Among them, 6 were found to carry clear genetic markers of Down syndrome, and another exhibited signs of Edwards syndrome, or trisomy 18. But this wasn't just a statistical exercise, it was a revelation. Because the remains in question weren't hidden or discarded, they were buried with care. One child, discovered in a Neolithic tomb in Ireland dating back 5,500 years, was just 6 months old when he died. His grave placement within a significant burial site, surrounded by adult remains, suggested he was not marginalized, but included. On the Greek island of Aegina, another child, aged between 12 and 16 months, was buried around 1300 BCE with an elaborate necklace composed of 93 beads made from exotic materials like faience and carnelian. These weren't the offerings of a people indifferent to disability. These were symbols of inclusion, value, and remembrance. Most striking were the Iron Age burials from Navarre, Spain, where cremation was the dominant funerary custom. And yet, infants with chromosomal conditions were not cremated. Instead, they were interred within homes or significant buildings, alongside objects like Mediterranean shells and bronze rings. This intentional departure from cultural norms signifies something powerful, a conscious decision to treat these individuals differently, not with rejection, but reverence. The genomic data, combined with archaeological context, dismantles the long-standing narrative that early humans were ruthlessly utilitarian. If survival alone were the goal, such children would not have made it far. Yet, not only did they live for months and even years, they were mourned, honored, and integrated into communal memory. This raises a critical question. Why? What compelled prehistoric humans, people without written language, legal systems, or medical knowledge, to invest so heavily in the care and ceremonial burial of the most vulnerable? The answer, encoded not just in genes but in graves, is empathy. These actions point to an evolved sense of social responsibility, a recognition of the intrinsic worth of every member of the group. And unlike temporary injury or elder care, supporting a child with a lifelong, visible condition from birth demands something deeper than survival instinct. It requires commitment, emotional connection, and perhaps even love. This reshapes our understanding of human evolution. It suggests that altruism was not an anomaly, but a central feature of human society. That our genetic story is not merely one of strength and dominance, but of softness, sacrifice, and inclusion. The very fact that we can now detect these patterns through molecular archaeology brings us closer to our ancestors than ever before, not just anatomically, but emotionally. In every sequenced strand, we see not only what they suffered from, but how they were seen. And that vision, rooted in reverence rather than rejection, tells us more about humanity than any tool or weapon ever could. Chapter 3: Sacred Burials and the Emotional Blueprint of Early Society's Single Compact. While ancient DNA has revolutionized our understanding of prehistoric compassion at the microscopic level, the visible landscape of how early societies treated individuals with disabilities can be read most profoundly in the silent language of burials. Across a wide span of geography and time, from Neolithic tombs to Iron Age settlements, archaeologists have unearthed graves that defy expectations. Interments not of warriors or chiefs, but of infants and young children with severe congenital conditions, laid to rest with artifacts, adornments, and placements that signal deep emotional investment. These sacred burials tell a compelling story of how early Homo sapiens viewed the vulnerable, and how the care extended in life was mirrored in the rituals of death. The material culture left behind in these graves, beaded necklaces of rare stones, carved amulets, imported shells, and intentional grave placement, offers irrefutable evidence that these individuals were not cast aside, but honored. In some cases, they received more elaborate burials than physically healthy adults, suggesting not pity, but reverence. The Greek island of Aegina reveals one such case. A 12 to 16-month-old girl with Down syndrome buried around 1300 BCE with 93 beads of glass paste, faience, and carnelian, items that required skilled craftsmanship and long-distance trade to acquire. These materials weren't casually discarded into a child's grave. They were curated and chosen, each bead possibly symbolizing a gesture of connection, mourning, or remembrance. In Iron Age Navarre, Spain, where cremation was standard, several infants with chromosomal abnormalities were found to be buried in homes or community structures rather than cemeteries, surrounded by personal tokens and symbols of identity. This was not accidental. It was a cultural deviation rooted in sentiment. To intentionally bury children in domestic spaces is to bring death into the heart of life, to merge memory with everyday existence, to assert presence in absence. These burials suggest that children with conditions like Down syndrome were not considered aberrations, but sacred members of the household. The Irish Neolithic tomb child, only 6 months old, was found in a collective burial setting among adults, reaffirming his place within the community, not apart from it. These are not isolated anomalies. When examined as a pattern, the message becomes loud and clear. Prehistoric humans recognized and responded to vulnerability not with exclusion, but with inclusion so deeply felt it became part of their funerary landscape. These practices reveal a sophisticated emotional blueprint, an internal logic that prized care, mourning, and continuity over practical gain. One might expect that in a survival-focused society, resources would be reserved for the fittest. But the evidence repeatedly shows that even those who posed a burden in life were treated with dignity in death. In fact, the very act of burial, digging a grave, sourcing items, arranging the body, is an emotional and physical labor that speaks to collective memory and grief. It transforms death from a biological fact into a social event. And when these burials include individuals who couldn't contribute labor, it signals something radical: love as cultural currency. What makes this even more profound is the consistency across regions and cultures. The similarities between burial practices in Neolithic Ireland, Bronze Age Greece, and Iron Age Spain suggest that this wasn't a localized sentiment. It was a continental ethos. Whether through shared ancestry or convergent evolution of emotional norms, prehistoric Europeans held common values around the care of disabled children. And while no written texts remain from these societies, the graves speak in a language older than words, the language of symbols, intention, and care. This challenges the traditional anthropological model that sees early human development as primarily driven by economic or ecological pressures. Instead, it introduces a new axis of evolution: emotional intelligence. The ability to form attachments, mourn losses, and preserve memory through ritual may have been as critical to human success as hunting skills or tool-making. These burials also hint at a spiritual or metaphysical framework. Why else adorn graves with meaningful objects? Why else preserve memory with such effort? Perhaps these societies believed in an afterlife, or at least in a continued connection between the living and the dead. If so, their treatment of disabled children in both life and death points to a belief in the inherent worth of every soul. In this way, ancient burial customs provide a mirror for modern values. They invite us to see ourselves not as the first humans to love deeply, but as the latest inheritors of a legacy that spans tens of thousands of years. In the end, what these sacred burials show us is that early humans did not just bury their dead. They buried their love, their grief, their hopes, and their memories. And in doing so, they left behind a roadmap of compassion etched into the very soil of our history. Chapter 4. The hidden infrastructure of prehistoric care, tools, tactics, and social adaptations beyond the emotional and symbolic. There existed a functional reality to supporting individuals with disabilities in prehistoric times. One that required tools, tactics, and social adaptations far more complex than we ever gave early humans credit for. In prehistoric societies, where every member typically contributed to survival through hunting, gathering, crafting, or child rearing, the presence of a group member with limited or no capacity to contribute fundamentally changed group dynamics. And yet, the archaeological and biological records suggest that groups did not reject or remove these members. Instead, they adapted. The survival of individuals like the Neanderthal child Tina or the Irish tomb infant wasn't accidental. It demanded a flexible, collaborative system of daily living. This invisible infrastructure of prehistoric caregiving extended from behavioral patterns to tool use, spatial design, and intergenerational roles. Let's begin with mobility. Nomadic hunter-gatherer groups moved frequently in response to seasonal resource shifts. Carrying a child with Down syndrome or any mobility-limiting condition during these migrations required either specially adapted tools or cooperative strategies. Leather or woven slings, primitive stretchers, or even hollowed-out animal hides may have been used to transport non-ambulatory individuals. While no direct artifacts of prehistoric disability transport have been found, similar items exist in later indigenous cultures, suggesting deep ancestral precedents. Additionally, evidence from prehistoric settlements indicates the use of strategic camp layouts, with smoother terrain, protective barriers, and fire placement, designed to accommodate the less mobile or vulnerable. The construction of hearths, the clustering of living areas, and even the division of labor suggest that group effort was organized around collective safety. Tasks like fire tending, food processing, and crafting could have been redistributed to those with limited mobility, allowing them to participate according to their capabilities, rather than being excluded entirely. There's also increasing evidence of elder and child caregivers, individuals who, past their physical prime, took on the critical role of aiding those who required additional help. These roles, though unglamorous in an evolutionary sense, may have played a pivotal role in ensuring group cohesion. Furthermore, food sharing, a deeply rooted behavior among early hominins, appears to have included those unable to forage or hunt. Cut marks on bones from various sites indicate systematic butchering for communal meals, and the strategic placement of certain remains near hearths implies shared consumption, supporting the idea that even the most dependent members had a place at the prehistoric table. Caregiving wasn't just physical, it was likely cognitive and emotional. Managing a child with Down syndrome, who may experience heightened anxiety, delayed language, or behavioral irregularities, required emotional regulation and social patience, which in turn implies neurological and emotional sophistication within the group. Prehistoric people likely developed routine-based strategies, nonverbal cues, and tactile interactions to provide a stable environment for such individuals. This level of care reflects a cognitive infrastructure as evolved as the physical one. Moreover, symbolic artifacts associated with disabled individuals suggest the use of ritual or spiritual frameworks to frame their presence in society. Objects found in their graves or personal spaces, carved stones, beads, shells, may not only have served as symbols of affection or status, but perhaps also acted as talismans or tools of emotional regulation, given to soothe, communicate, or ritualize care. These items hint that the care provided was not merely utilitarian but meaning-rich, possibly integrated into storytelling, myth, or communal identity. The archaeological record also hints at a gendered aspect of care. While difficult to prove definitively, patterns suggest women may have been central to caregiving roles, given their recurring proximity to burial goods and settlement hearths. This doesn't limit men's involvement, but rather speaks to a social fabric where roles were fluid and guided by need, not strict hierarchy. What emerges is a prehistoric society capable of behavioral elasticity, a willingness to redistribute effort, adjust speed, and innovate systems of support. This hidden infrastructure isn't visible in monumental architecture or grand tools, but in the quiet consistency of lived routines, in how a camp was arranged to include the slowest member, in how food was divided to nourish the weakest, in how hands were joined to carry someone who could not walk. Such behaviors would have required not only empathy, but trust, coordination, and shared memory. Qualities that form the cornerstone of what we now call culture. These adaptations may have even conferred evolutionary advantages. Groups that supported their vulnerable likely benefited from increased social cohesion, intergenerational learning, and emotional bonding. All factors that improve group survival. The time and energy invested in caregiving built stronger social networks, which in turn enabled better cooperation, resilience, and conflict resolution. So when we look at a fossilized child's bone or an intricately arranged burial, we're not just seeing traces of compassion. We're witnessing a whole system behind that compassion. A web of support, structure, and intention woven into daily life. The hidden infrastructure of prehistoric care challenges modern ideas of progress by reminding us that innovation doesn't always mean invention. Sometimes it means inclusion. Sometimes it means a community slowing down for one person, and in doing so, becoming stronger together. And perhaps that's the true mark of an advanced society, not in how fast it moves, but in how far it's willing to go to carry its most vulnerable members along. Chapter 5. The Ancient Origins of Human Kindness, What It Means for Us Today. As we piece together the physical, genetic, and emotional residues of our prehistoric past, a striking and transformative truth emerges. The care our ancestors extended to those with disabilities was not marginal, rare, or reluctantly given. It was a central, defining characteristic of what made them human. Chapter after chapter of scientific discovery, from CT-scanned Neanderthal skulls to ancient DNA databases, from symbolic grave goods to reconstructed social behaviors, all points converge on a single evolutionary constant. Kindness wasn't a late invention. It was there from the beginning. This insight challenges the dominant narrative that prehistoric life was solely a brutal, competitive struggle for survival where only the fittest triumphed. Instead, it paints a portrait of ancient communities that repeatedly chose protection over pragmatism, inclusion over efficiency, and loyalty over logic. And in doing so, they rewrote the evolutionary script in ways we are only just beginning to appreciate. The implications of these findings are not limited to academia. They resonate across how we perceive morality, policy, healthcare, disability, and human worth in the present. If prehistoric people, operating without written laws, formal religions, or institutional support, could uphold the value of lives that modern societies still struggle to fully embrace, then what excuse do we have today? Why is it that the world's most advanced civilizations still fail to provide adequate care for the most vulnerable when Paleolithic hunter-gatherers made it a daily priority? Perhaps the modern failure is not a lack of resources, but a loss of vision, a forgetting of what it means to be truly human. The skeletal remains of children like Tina do not just memorialize ancient loss, they expose modern denial. We live in an age of algorithms and automation, of speed and productivity, where human value is often measured by utility. Yet the archaeological record is unambiguous. Humans have always defied this logic. They carried children who couldn't walk. They buried infants who never spoke a word. They mourned lives that had no economic output. That is the legacy we've inherited, and it is ours to continue.